Welcome to today's session brought to you by Reuters Events. This morning, we're going to be focusing on how to transform your customer interactions with AI-driven innovations and how to strive for a personalized experience. If you have any questions throughout the session, please make us aware and enter it into the chat function. We'll get through to those and we'll be putting those to the panelists throughout the course of the session. We expect today's session to last anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour. And you're more than welcome to sort of drop in and out. I'm glad to be joined by an amazing panel of CX leaders today, including Danny Bates of Starzplay, Debbie Bond of LoveHoney, Trevor Gordon of Sodexo, and Martin Ratolístka of Kiwi.com. I'll now hand over to the panel to introduce themselves. Danny, why don't we start with you, and if you could offer just a quick introduction to yourself. Danny, sorry, can you hear us? No problem. Trevor, we'll start with.
Sorry, Paul. Sorry, Paul. I'm here with you. Sorry, apologies, Paul. Yeah, thank you, Paul, for the introduction, and nice to speak to everyone here on the panel. I'm Danny Bates. I'm the CCO and one of the co-founders of Starzplay. We're a subscription video on demand service in Middle East, North Africa, and Pakistan area. We've been operating for around 5 years now, and with premium content for customers to acquire from our platform, usable over smart TVs, apps, mobile, and so on. It's been a really sort of interesting journey to grow the business from nothing to where we are today, with around about 1.8 million paying subscribers across the Middle East, North Africa, and Pakistan area. And obviously a big part of achieving that has been, number one, our focus on building customer products, and number two, our focus on how we manage those customer interactions and how we take them along the journey with Starzplay. Previously to Starzplay, I spent a number of years with OSN, which was the leading satellite operator in the Middle East. I looked after their customer services, their call center teams, their retention teams, and also their installation and sales teams. So, many years sort of experience now in dealing with customer interactions and some of the challenges that brings.
Cool. Trevor, what did you?
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I'm Trevor Gordon. I'm the global omnichannel retail director for Sodexo. Sodexo is a leading provider of quality of life solutions globally. We deal with 100 million customers a day. And now just look forward to being, thank you for asking us to take part in the event, and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Perfect. And Debbie?
Hi, I'm Debbie Bond. I'm CEO at LoveHoney. LoveHoney is an 18-year-old pure play business selling sexy lingerie and adult toys, and we are the sexual happiness people. I've been in e-com for about 25 years, sort of worked with blue chip companies and startups in the UK and US. I've been at LoveHoney just under 2 years and look after everything except for finance and tech. And 6 weeks ago, I was given the added pleasure of looking after our customer care operation.
Perfect. And Martin, do you want to finish off the introductions?
Hello, everyone. My name is Martin. I'm a Chief Order Processing Officer at Kiwi.com. Pretty unusual title, right? Basically, my role in Kiwi.com is that I'm responsible for making our customer service operations as efficient as possible. And basically, I'm running a variety of teams responsible for automation, process improvements, and tooling for our agents. Kiwi.com is a travel tech company. We started more than 7 years ago. I joined nearly 7 years ago as well. We were starting as a startup company, and up until the very moment, our mission is to become a virtual global super carrier. What does it mean? We are virtually connecting any possible way how you can get from A to B, either by air, by ground transportation, or by taxis, and securing the way that you get from A to B.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. So we've got a couple of questions to kick off today's conversations. Again, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to just pop them in the question box, and we'll be putting those to the panel a bit later on today. So Danny, I'll start with a question for you. So Starzplay at the moment are focusing really heavily on community management and trying to accommodate more time for CS agents to to listen in and respond proactively to customers. Could you give us a bit of a run through about how that's working, and also what effect it's having on your customers' experience right now?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think for us traditionally, I think in our first couple of years of operation, we were very focused as the majority of businesses on those inbound requests that we saw coming in. So the direct sort of messaging via social or email channels that were coming into our customer service teams, and that was allowing us to address, if you like, directly the issues or challenges maybe that our customers were facing. But what we really started to see is there were so many more conversations happening outside on social networks that were not part of things being addressed directly to Starzplay's customer service teams. So, for example, we have around about 12,000 content assets that we're carrying on our platform at any one time. So there could be a big series like Vikings is a big series that we cover, Vikings season 6, very, very popular piece of content. And when we were looking in the social environment, a lot of people are looking for where this content exists. Not everyone's aware yet that it exists on Starzplay. There might be a previous season on other platforms, but only the latest season is with Starzplay. So what we started to do more proactively using social listening tools is really started to look at the conversations that were happening on social channels, either with a Starzplay handle, so that they were talking directly about our brands, but not directly to us. Or secondly, they were talking about key parts of our product offering that maybe that they didn't know were directly addressed by Starzplay. So this is where, as we started to see those conversations, we saw the opportunity to actually be involved in those conversations as a brand. And honestly, we went through over a period of time a couple of ways trying to address this. This was with our social media team. We did it with an agency, and we did part of it with our customer services. And honestly, it was always a challenge really assigning who was truly responsible for those interactions, if you like, with our brand. So late last year, early 2020, we actually moved this across completely to our customer service team. Which really helped because it gave it a home and a focus, and it was no longer split across 3 teams. And we really started to evolve the tool set that we were using to address and actually identify how we can interact with these customers. We really started to address how we could free up the time for our customer service teams to do this, how we could make them more productivity for those teams. And that's where AI and bot usage really helped us. Rather than just exponentially increasing our headcount, we actually worked to become more efficient to make this time available for the teams. And really the effect of that community management within customer service when it actually comes into effect is quite transformative, because what we've actually started to see is this really is the best presentation of our brand that we can give actually to potential customers in the market. When they actually see that, number one, we're interacting with them in a very human way with a very clear sort of brand voice. We're interacting with them with gifts in a very personal way. We see that customers really, or potential future customers as well, really appreciate that interaction. But secondly, we've also seen that our reach has materially changed. I mean, some of these groups that are actually talking about your brands, some of these people have 300,000, 700,000 followers. And you actually start to organically become part of people's wall or people's trail of social media, and actually become organically involved in that in a creative way. So for us, that's had an impact on our brand recognition, on our sentiments that people have around Starzplay Arabia online, and also ultimately in our acquisition funnel as well, in helping us move more of our acquisition in an organic way. So I think for us it's still something that's evolving for us, but it's been a really really positive change. And I think the combination of using AI to free more time for your customer service people to become productive in this way has been important. And I think it's also been a challenging journey to find the right sort of social listening tool or right social interaction tool to actually be able to manage these customer interactions and actually, you know, positively and proactively track that productivity of your teams.
Okay, no, it's a really interesting point, and especially the point about, you know, allocation of resources too, which brings me on to my next question for you, Debbie. I mean, we've discussed previously, you know, when it comes to allocating workforce resources across different channels, how are you sort of prioritizing that at the moment at LoveHoney?
Yeah, it's not easy for us, to be honest. Our customer care team is quite small, it was about 50, but we do run a 24/7 operation across UK, US and Australia. And we support, you know, a breadth of channels, the usual phone, email, chat and social. Our work planning process, to be honest, is quite basic. We don't have the luxury at the moment of any software tools which can help us do that. And we've been pretty reliant on just using Excel. And also, in fairness, with pretty poor operational data, which is clearly far from ideal. So it tends to work on, I'm going to call it historic averages, but quite a lot of the time on people's previous gut feel. I'm very fortunate that quite a lot of our team leads and previous manager have been in the company for a long time. So that was great because they sort of instinctively got things right, but also a double-edged sword of that was we weren't really keeping up with the data and really understanding what was actually going on rather than perception of what was going on. We planned the resources based on volume by channel and by territory, and making sure that we have adequate handover time between those different territories. Given all the teams answer all of the queries regardless of where they originate from. So we're very much one global team. We tend to always try and prioritise telephone and chat. Obviously anyone that's customer facing, customers on the line, customers on the chat, that obviously has to take priority. But interesting, one of the first things I felt that I needed to do when I took over the operation was to remove all the performance metrics. So that might feel like an odd and weird thing to do when you don't have very strong data. But essentially what I could observe and see was that the agents were feeling an enormous amount of pressure by juggling these different channels. And it essentially meant that our resource planning was not around what the right thing for the customer was. It was more about what suited the agent. And that's not what we need to do. So taking away those performance metrics, which were being used, I think, to a degree more of a, perhaps as a stick, as a worry, rather than as a motivator, was unhelpful in terms of how we thought about planning our resource. And interestingly, having taken away those performance metrics, what we've actually seen is an increase in performance. So our resource planning and the way we're thinking about the prioritisation really is about putting the customer back into that prioritisation rather than the agent. So turning that model on its head. And as I said, what we've actually seen is an improvement in customer satisfaction. We've seen an improvement in agent satisfaction, and overall we've just seen an improvement in productivity and efficiency, which was not my intended consequence. I was just trying to relieve the pressure of the agents through COVID, but very pleasing to see that. So interested to hear how other people optimise their resource planning, because it's clearly going to be a big focus for LoveHoney going forward.
Okay, cool. And I suppose at the other end of that scale, Trevor, you know, obviously you guys are running at Sodexo, are running a huge operation internationally. So could you go into a bit more detail on, you know, how you guys are utilising AI and, you know, how it's playing for you at the moment?
Of course, and just very interesting points that Danny and Debbie raised, because they're consistent, even though we have different business models, different types of offering, very consistent challenges we're having across both. And if you consider, before the pandemic, AI was important. It's becoming even more so as we've had to accelerate all our digital offerings and models over the last 3 months. So if you think about this, you know, what is the customer expectation? Generally, the customer expectation is that they want any desired information and services available on any device at any person's need, you know, at any person's moment of need. And pandemic has amplified this exactly to the point that, Debbie's highlighted. People, really want to know then, there and now. And if we looked at if I had to sum up our strategy in one sentence, it'd probably be, we're using AI to help deliver touchless and personalized experiences to our digital customers post-COVID-19, because really we still have increased our digital channels, but it's very much about that on-site presence as well. So it's how do you mix the use of the digital channels, the customer care into that digital and physical. I guess probably some considerations in our strategy RI is, how do we make AI effortless for both the consumer and operator? How do we actually help this in the present and the future? Debbie raised a really good point. The experiences for customer service and customer experience aren't uniform. So where we're really seeing AI is allow us to for that agility in managing the peaks in demand. As you've highlighted, we're across many different geographies. We have support teams that are not located and can be around multiple countries. And so AI for us is really important around that. Danny also raised a point as well, which is, the length of the pandemic for how long this will be around is changing some of the underlying fundamentals of customer experience and how people interact with their brands. So what is our strategy around that? So we've had to change some of our, let's say, messaging around this. So it's kind of, as Debbie highlighted as well, it's that balance between efficiency and humanity. So it's in terms of using AI in the right way at that right channel to actually deliver that right messaging. But there's at some points where people just need to speak to they need to speak with a human being. So for us, it's hugely important. It was before the pandemic and even more so now. So it's a real growth area for us, and we want to use it in the right way. So hopefully that's shed some light on how we're using it. Yeah,
absolutely. And so I come to you, Martin. For anyone who may not have heard of Kiwi.com, and obviously you're in quite a difficult sector at the moment. How far advanced are you guys when it comes to artificial intelligence, and what do you see that those long-term uses being for these kind of innovations?
It's a story of failure, and it's an interesting story. Our story of how we are using AI. Obviously, as I said, we are a travel tech company, right? So we are using various forms of machine learning and AI in various parts of our product, including pricing, search setup, the way how we are combining all possible combinations of how to get from A to B, etc. But in terms of customer care and the usage of AI for these purposes, why I'm saying that it's a failure story. We are a very young company, right? And we are very passionate about what we do. So we really believed that we will just throw some AI into our chat function and it will solve all our problems, right? It was a big mistake to expect this. Why? Because travel is a super complex industry to handle the customer service in. So basically, our story is that we tried to create our own chatbot. We have defined all the possible scenarios. We were prepared for anything that our customers can ask us for, and it obviously didn't work out, right? Because we have no idea what our customers want and need, because usually their queries are much more complex than something that you could just define as a decision tree. So the way how we learned from this is that we figured out that we need to work with AI in a different manner, and not facing the AI to the customers directly, but basically using the AI for understanding better our customers' needs and what we can do about them. So the way how we are using AI is rather for analyzing all the customer feedback we receive, all the channels that we are serving, and basically trying to sort the possible issues and incidents that we see, trying to understand the contact reasons, and trying to figure out what we can do based on this.
Okay, and that's really interesting. Obviously, in an industry as complex as yours, I can imagine the creation of a chatbot would be incredibly complex. I just wanted to loop back to Debbie and Danny, because obviously you guys, you both mentioned how you are during the pandemic you've moved away from using metrics and performance metrics. Long term, what's your thinking with regards to those? Are you going to revert back to normal once this pandemic hopefully eventually leaves? Will you modify your performance metrics in the future? Or what's your sort of long term thinking with those?
Yeah, I mean, I think just from a Starzplay perspective, I mean, the pandemic, from a content consumption point of view, really changed things for us overnight. For us, we saw our consumption go up nearly 4 times our normal level, basically overnight. Everyone was stuck at home under lockdown, so many people were turning to video services as a way to sort of pass their time with that scenario happening. And what's been positive for us is that increase of 4 times the consumption and 4 times interaction with our customers has actually continued post the COVID sort of situation, as the lockdowns and the situation has eased. So we've continued to see that increased traffic. And obviously that meant that we very quickly had to adjust. We couldn't, scale up our call center staff overnight. We had to find ways to adjust how we were working, and also not lose the focus that we'd put into the team to try and obviously, move more into the community management side as well. So, as a team, we really made some sort of changes. We changed some of the flows of how the agents were logging the inbound traffic that we were seeing, maybe how they were closing off the tickets. We lost some visibility of data in some cases, particularly on the social cases. But actually what we did manage to win was productivity from the team that we were then able to put back into actually dealing with the increased volume of inbound traffic that we were seeing. In terms of the long-term view, really we're still sort of deciding what that long-term view will be, to be honest. That those interactions are still much higher than they were. When I talk with our customer service team at the moment, I think our approach is just to try and apply common sense to this. The most important thing that we can do is manage our customers. Whether we have perfect, tracking data at the back of that for managing customer service metrics, I think for the time being, we're making the concession that, okay, possibly we don't have that, but actually at least we're able to manage our customer interactions in a timely manner. So honestly, I would say we'll see where the long term will return. If we see this continued level of consumption, then I think we'll have to probably make some adjustments to our headcounts and hopefully in the longer term return to tracking those metrics. But I think the other thing that it's forced us to do, Paul, which has been good actually, is actually ask ourselves some of those things that are some of the things we're doing really important. Do we really need to do them? So it's actually made ourselves challenge ourselves as a team, challenge ourselves to say, how can we actually work more productively? Do we really need to do everything that we were doing before? And actually learn some things that I think will actually help us going forward to actually make our customer service team's job a little bit easier and make them more productive.
Okay, cool. And Debbie, would your own thoughts reflect that, or are you guys taking a slightly different approach?
No, I think I would agree with a lot of what Danny said. I think obviously LoveHoney experienced the same spike that in COVID that the video industry did. I think our people were doing something slightly different than watching videos. But that was something we've had to respond to very quickly. We're fortunate that we have quite a large casual base of staff who we're able to bring in, so we were able to maintain a level of service. So that was fortunate. But I think really for me, it was about changing the focus from what I would call productivity metrics to satisfaction metrics. So it's much more about, again, not measuring what the people are doing and how quickly they're doing it, sort of almost like with a sausage machine. It was really about focusing on the quality of the output of what was the service we're actually giving to the customer. And I agree with Danny, we had to take a long, hard look at quite a lot of the activities we were doing And people filling out reports for the sake of filling out reports on Excel, because that's what they've done for the last 18 years, you know, it's not helpful. So we've had to be more agile, a bit more ruthless. And again, to Danny's point, perhaps lost some visibility of those performance metrics. But the key ones that are really, really important to me around satisfaction, both for the agent and for the customer, we've been able to improve actually by taking away some of the noise. In terms of long-term vision, for me, it's always going to be about the satisfaction metrics. And I'm quite looking forward to stripping away some of the historic baggage that tends to build up in any organisation unless you're really forced to take a long, hard look at yourself and your processes to make sure that you're constantly optimising and driving efficiency. So, and that's something that we're doing in Anger at the moment.
Okay, brilliant. So we've actually got our first question from the audience, guys, and I will. I'll put this to the floor. I think maybe Martin or Trevor might have an interesting perspective on this. So the question's from Tony Crosby, and he asks, what do you think about chatbots? We are building a library of resources to allow customers to self-serve and hope to reduce the number of phone calls by offering effective alternatives. Ease of use is key, and customers will always choose the easiest option. So maybe one of you guys could offer up a bit of insights on your own sort of experience with chatbots, and elaborate on that slightly.
I could go, and I'll probably build on some of Martin's points. I've at Sodexo and other organizations I worked with, it's everyone makes that experience of avoid, how do you avoid launching with a dumb chatbot? You launch it and you think it's going to be fantastic, but at that point in time, I don't think people have a lot of experience with conversational customer experience and customer service. And so what we've actually done is we focus a lot on the employee experience and the customer experience. So what we do is trial a lot of the use of chatbot internally first with our as an internal kind of service mechanism, both for our agents and other members of staff. Because if you think of it, any member of our staff could be a point of contact with our customers. So in effect, it's kind of what Martin was touching on. So launching with our employees first and focusing on that use of machine learning to actually build that experience up, because where we've launched with those, let's call it dumb chatbots, if people have a bad interaction or a bad experience with that chatbot at that point in time, they might choose not to interact with your brand or service again. So the other area I would say around the chatbot is we're an international company, but a lot of us are based in the UK and for Europe for now. And it's actually really building the GDPR and ability to actually manage any depth of query or interaction into that chatbot as well. So getting it right is good. So what I would just say is test internally first, maybe potentially think about trying out on your employees or an internal service, and then launch when you've got that degree of confidence in it. Do not launch with a dumb chatbot. It'll do more harm than good.
Yeah, absolutely. If I may add up on what Trevor said, Tony, thank you for your question. My recommendation to you would be really to spend some time to really understand how the queries of your customers really look like, and try to find some basic patterns where you can really define clear process, clear flow, because these would be then the queries that you will be able to answer using chatbot. Really don't over-engineer it, and rather focus on things like basic verification of the customer, and based on the verification, any internal APIs you can query for example, providing the information about the status of I don't know, some tasks, or it depends obviously on the industry, but really I would suggest to start with analyzing the customers' requests, sorting them, and focusing on the low-hanging fruits of simple things you can build up processes on.
One thing I'd like to add is don't necessarily expect a linear relationship in terms of your efficiency, because the chatbot takes away a lot of the very simple and simple queries, leaving the agents with the complex queries that take much longer to resolve. And also need to take into consideration the agent's experience of constantly dealing with complex query after complex query after complex query all day, every day, can be much more relentless than you might necessarily anticipate. And that was sort of an unintended consequence of when we launched a chatbot, as was the agent impact on that as well, not just around thinking that you were sort of skimming off the top. The experience in the round, I think, needs to be taken into consideration, because you just can't have people dealing with complex queries all day, every day. They do need to have a bit of a break from it and to try and build that into their workflow.
Okay, and Danny, did you have any thoughts on the current sort of use of chatbots at the moment?
Yeah, I think for us, I would kind of, second the other panelists really here. I mean, I think what we did ourselves is we went through that exercise of really segmenting and understanding all of the inbound traffic that we saw. We then identified, a couple of interactions that were the more simple interactions, if you like. So rather than trying to take on anything too complex, one interaction that we see regularly is if someone wants to, for our service, you can deactivate at any time. It's your choice as a customer. You could, we're on a month-to-month, if you like, paid period with customers auto-renewing, so they can deactivate at any time. So we get a lot of common question where the customer just says, how can I deactivate my service? So it's a very, very common question. And we have a couple of clear steps in that process for us. That, one is, a defense, kind of customer defense step, and secondly, then moves through that process of helping the customer with their deactivation. So for us, it's been really about not trying to run before we can walk, address the sort of really repetitive, more simple things, and take the wins that we could gain from that. And I think that's worked quite well for us. And I think as we evolve, we'll try and add more categories within that, but we're kind of just taking the time to learn to make sure that we are fulfilling, those requests properly. And then as we sort of, tick one off and it works properly for us, then we'll move on to the next most simple, highest volume query that we see and address them one by one. So I think that's kind of been our approach.
Okay, brilliant. And so we have another question from the audience from Georgina Ledwood. I think, Trevor, this might be in your ballpark, but again, anyone feels like they have an insight up to offer here, feel free to jump in. So we see a number of businesses looking to move direct contacts on the phone to the digital channels. Are any of you guys measuring this conversion?
Yes, we are. I think in terms of that, a lot of it is, if you look at, say, around our strategy around this, is the investment into, so before the pandemic, AI and virtual assistants were our biggest level of investment, and that's pre-COVID. But as the other panelists have highlighted here, companies are putting more effort into channels to become omni-channel. So, and you can't have that orchestration without that right strategy. So where we're actually using a lot of AI is around that automation to do the orchestration. So particularly where you've got peaks in volumes. And kind of what the team has highlighted here is that, the days come back of having our contact centers or customer service center all in the same building and location. Now we've had to move very quickly to remote working. So besides using that AI for the automation to the orchestration, it's helping us long-term in both our labor planning and occupancy planning. So in terms of looking at that point there around, what are you looking for in that channel shift in terms of that service around whatever journey you experience at that right time? And in effect, we do have quite a few KPIs and metrics around that, because that is starting to build business case around labor management, what real estate we have, and that channel shift to make sure that we're hitting those customer service KPIs across the board. So I think also to Debbie's point and Danny's point is, we've dropped some of that in the interim for COVID, but we're not making it fully upfront with our customer service teams, but keeping it more in the background. But yeah, we take a very data-driven approach to that, and that orchestration to ensure that you're doing it in the right way is hugely important.
Yeah, and I think, Paul, to add to that and partly answer sort of Gangadahar's question that he sort of mentioned on the Q&A as well, I think, look, we took a very conscious decision at the start. You know, I came from a background where we were in satellite television. We operated with ARPUs of $85 a month. We had a bit of margin to play with in terms of our customer service. Moving across into the OTT SVOD environment, you move from an ARPU of $85 to $10 a month. Your margins are extremely tight and your ARPUs are much lower. So we made a conscious decision from the start so that we could manage our resource planning and our headcount to not have inbound customer service from a telephony point of view, but actually to manage that from purely social, email or messaging channels. And what that allowed us to do is actually, you know, be able to resource plan much less for the peaks. So we didn't have to necessarily resource to deal with that, you know, 8 p.m. in the evening peak that you would see maybe in a traditional pay TV environment, and having to have a very heavy headcount to deal with that. We've been able to manage, still get response times back to the customer of 1 hour to 2 hours, but actually manage our resource peaks much more effectively. And what we do, if there is a more difficult sort of inquiry, what we do, rather than take the inbound calls, we will offer our, you know, we will speak to our customers and actually make an outbound call to that customer when it's necessary. So for us, it's a little bit different. We never really made a transition. We made a conscious decision at the start in terms of how we wanted to work, and have sort of have adapted through that, and actually still been able to provide, even without, if you like, an inbound call channel, still been able to provide a very strong level of customer service. And where needed, making those outbound calls where it's needed for that customer.
So interestingly, at LoveHoney, we've got a different dichotomy of, and it'd be interesting to see how much we can push into a digital channel, because our customers love the phone. They love to share their experiences. They're very much reliant. A lot of our calls are around which product should they buy, for which purpose, and there's a lot of conversation to and fro and sharing that goes on to get customers to have the right product, to have the right experience, what they're looking for. I personally thought people might have been a bit shy about having a conversation of doing that on the phone, and might be better off doing it on digital, but that's proven absolutely not to be the case. So phone plays a very important part in our customer care and our customer relationship for us, and it'll be interesting to see how elastic those other channels prove to be, or how complementary they are. I don't have an appreciation for the understanding of how they'll play together yet. But I'm going to be really interested to see how that pans out going forward.
If I may add and kind of recap this topic, Georgina Gangadhar, thank you for raising this. I think you are very much to the point, and the shift of the traditional channels towards the more digital channels is actually one of the main things that we are currently discussing in our company as well. So to answer, basically, we are not only measuring this shift, we are actually promoting it, and we are really driving the shift from the traditional, mainly voice channel, towards digital self-service capabilities. And the reason is simple, because we believe that it is much more efficient for us, but at the same time for the customer. We are in the travel industry. Okay, it's a kind of it may vary from industry to industry, and we do not offer pre-sales support where phone may make much more sense. But from the servicing perspective, so to answer Gangadhar's question, why we do not show the phone number directly on the website, because we believe that it's much easier for the customer to self-service, basically. And don't get me wrong, we still have like 1,000, more than 1,000 people picking up the phones, right? But we are trying to shift towards more digital, because basically we see a lot of potential for what we can handle for the customer immediately, straight away, without any back and forth, basically agent asking, who are you? You answering, agent asking, what can I help you with? Customer creating request, agent trying to grasp it, looking here and there for information, trying to figure out the status. We have APIs for that, right? So I completely agree with Gangadhar that we may be missing on some customer segments of baby boomers and Generation X, which is not really used to this experience. And we are still offering, as I say, the phone call support once you confirm your identity, so that we understand what is your query about. But in general, basically, wherever we see that we can offer some self-service option, we are always very eager to offer it, because we can then provide straight away instant response, instant resolution, instantly provide the status of the request or offer option of upsell, cross-sell, etc.
I think, Paul, as well, sorry, just to add one point to that, I think, you know, probably same for Martin and same for sort of Starzplay, is for us in particular, our product has no, if you like, physical interaction with the customer. We have nothing that we deliver. We have nothing that you sort of physically take hold of, maybe as you do sort of with Debbie and the product that she has. And so what we've really tried to focus on is making sure that our interactions on our applications and our web products are very, very simple. Our sign-up journey is 2 to 3 simple steps, and you're immediately watching our content. So we've tried to do a lot of work on making sure that the user journeys are very, very simple, so that you don't need necessarily to speak to someone by phone, and that the queries that you're going to have around that are relatively straightforward and can be dealt with online without needing that call. As I say, if we, same as Martin's organization, if we need to, we do then make that, you know, that outbound call or that number available to the customer later, but we find that we're able to deal with the vast majority of things online.
And so Trevor and Debbie, I'd like to see, put that question back to you guys as well, in terms of, you know, obviously, well, artificial intelligence, you know, chatbots and those kind of things, they're becoming a lot, you know, a much bigger part of our customer experience and customer service departments. You know, is it a risk that you could sort of alienate less tech savvy customers? And you know, what's the alternative there? Is it a case of just making that customer journey simpler, or is it offering alternatives?
I think is if you see, we're all come from different types of businesses, but there's a real theme running through here, which is it's that merging of customer experience and your traditional customer service. And whether you are a pure play digital player, whether you're a services company, or you have a physical product like Debbie's company, there is that need to get that customer experience right. And there will be obviously always those type of people that will want to speak to someone at the end of the phone. And I think it's, to Martin's point, it's trying to do as much as you can around digital self-service for those customers that want that. So in terms of that, because it might not just be a customer service query, because if you look at a traditional customer service query, there is opportunity there around loyalty, there is opportunities for upsell, cross-sell, new services, etc., etc. So it's getting that strategy and that orchestration right, so you're dealing with those simpler, easy, transactional type queries there, but you're actually funneling those customers to the right agent or person at that point of time when they actually need to speak to someone. So I think it's the old world view of just, it's a contact center, it's going to be an inbound call. All, as we see here, all businesses are evolving from that, and it's about getting that balance right. But at the same time, at the end of the day, sometimes you just want to speak to someone at the end of the phone.
Absolutely. And Debbie, did you want to finish us off on that point?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. I think at the end of the day, the customer's king. And if the customer wants to contact us via whatever means they want to, I see it as our job to make sure that we can do that efficiently and effectively as possible. Also considering the impact it has on how we resource our business and our agent experience as well. So it's definitely a two-way street. There's a big shift, obviously, with all this AI and digital coming in. I think there's very few people that have got it right yet. There's nothing more frustrating than using a bot or a live chat and ending up typing in capitals, are you still there? So it's, and that's been my experience on many, many companies. And then you pick up the phone and you're grumpy. But I think for us, I can't really envisage a time where we wouldn't have a telephone line. Our physical products and our category, that one-to-one communication is so important. Equally being able to facilitate and unlock the value of our community to our customers to help support each other, I think is going to be really interesting going forward, probably more so for me than bots and such like that will take away the super easy, where's my order type queries, but I'm still going to be left with 60-70% of people that are looking for human interaction, advice and support. So I think it's watch this space. It's a very exciting time at the moment in this industry.
I would just add to that, right before this call, I had to rebook a flight with a travel agency that had given future travel vouchers for a previously cancelled flight. So I wanted to pay part cash, use some loyalty point rewards, and to use a voucher. And in the end, I called the number, and the query was resolved by a super helpful agent in about 5 minutes, where I spent about 25 minutes trying to figure out how to do it online. So to Debbie's point, sometimes you just want to speak to someone at the end of the phone so they can sort it out. So good point.
Brilliant. So I think what we'll do is we'll just I think we'll put a final question to the entire panel. In terms of the long term, once we're past COVID and once we're past this new normal, what role is artificial intelligence and these kind of innovations going to play in the long-term future of customer experience? What's that synergy, and what's between traditional customer service and AI-driven experiences? What's the long-term strategy for you guys in rolling out these changes?
I can go first if you want. Very simply, it's around that. It's an area that AI and virtual assistants is something we continue to invest in, and it's about, for us, it is about that omnichannel piece. It's about getting that strategy and that orchestration right, and how do we actually use the key challenge for us. I think Debbie's right. No one's got this right yet. And it's how do we use that intelligent automation to do the orchestration. So over the next year, that is a big area of growth and investment for us.
Yeah, and I think just in terms of for Starzplay, I think actually, there's a couple of approaches for us. Number one is we're trying to really use our customer service data to also build our product. So, when we look at the challenges that customer face maybe on our product, we also go back and look at our UI and our UX and the areas of the product that we can change to actually mean that the customer doesn't need to contact us to solve a problem. So I think a big part of our focus is using that customer service data, using that with our development teams to evolve our actual product, simplify our product, make our product more usable by the customer, is really the big focus for us. We want to avoid them needing to contact us in the first place. We want to build a product that really serves their needs. So I think that's our long-term strategy and where we're very focused right now.
And I guess for LoveHoney, it's about finding the optimal blend of the human versus AI, both from an efficiency perspective, but from a service perspective. And I'd be really interested to see how it can potentially unlock the value of the wider community. And to Danny's point, take the insight from our customer base to make our products better and our overall service better from start to finish.
My perspective, completely agree with you, Debbie. It's about finding the right blend, the ideal mix of channels and the way how we interact with our customers so that we serve them the best possible way. And the way I perceive it is basically splitting the whole operations into 3 different areas. Area number 1, what we are trying to do is basically to grasp the customers' question. It's just a question about finding out some information that the customer is missing. And for that, we intend to be using AI in a way of smart FAQ section, where you can just type some keywords, and we are automatically sorting for you the relevant articles, or trying to really answer your question before you actually ask it, just by sensing at what stage of your journey you are, what were your previous purchases, etc. The second area, as I was describing already, would be based on the customer feedback and the way how we analyze it using AI to provide the best possible self-service capabilities for I don't know, checking the status of some request, or offering cross-sell, upsell, etc. And the third area, that's where the human factor is definitely still valid even for the future from my perspective. And those are the queries that, for example, Trevor mentioned, right? A very complex query, which is difficult to define as a process, or urgent queries for us in travel industry. It may be people being stuck at the airport, not knowing whether the flight will be cancelled or not, etc. So in this third area, from my perspective, we need people for sure.
Brilliant. Well, guys, let me wrap up with, firstly thanking you guys as our amazing panelists for today, and offering up some insights. It sounds like it's a really exciting time for this area across the board, I think. Also to our audience, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. I hope you guys got a ton of insights from these leaders here. And yeah, just to let you know, this webinar is running in partnership with the upcoming Reuters Customer Service and Experience Europe, which is taking place on the 26th and 27th of August. So it's free to register, so you'll get a link after this session finishes. Please feel free to register, send across to the team, and look forward to carrying on the conversation there. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting us.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.